systems, publishing, and software. When the question is information and communications, the answer is NYNEX.
AFSCME, the Public Employee Union, representing more than 1 million public employees in states, cities, and towns across the country, fighting for emerging issues like child care, parental leave, and workplace health and safety. AFSCME, in the public service.
Coming up next on C-SPAN, on the eve of the presidential primary election in the state of Ohio, we travel to Cleveland for a candidates forum sponsored by the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union. We begin our coverage of that event with the remarks of the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Let me express my thanks for this invitation to share with you on this occasion, to again be with members of the family of labor. My earliest days of involvement in the challenge to keep America strong and make America better. We've been involved with the meat cutters and meat packers, the retail workers. In 1955, when the challenge was to end racial violence in the South, Rosa Parks refused to go to the back of the bus. Dr. King reached out to her and extended leadership and made a call to the nation. The first major contribution of $10,000 was sent by Pat Gorman of the meat cutters, delivered by Charlie Hayes and Addie Wyatt. From the earliest days of our struggle for change, you've been there. Received the Bellarmine Award, the medal in Louisville, working through and with Pat Gorman. I marched and fought the workers in UFCW in Greeley, Colorado. I marched with workers in Virginia and Maryland fighting the Purdue Chicken Company. It seems to me a leader cannot afford in these times to be absent at the point of challenge. Can't be afraid to hold a picket sign in your hand or to sweat without shame. I've been with you at the point of challenge, whether Conagra, Cargill, Iowa, across this nation. The point of leadership today is not in an office sitting high looking low. It's not theorizing about change. It's not managing the status quo. It's managing to change it. And change will take place at the plant gate that closes on workers without notice or too little notice. It will take place at some schoolyard where youth with good minds can't get scholarships and can't make loans. Teachers can't get paid. It will take place at some hospital where somebody is dying in the admitting office because they don't have a green or yellow card to go upstairs to a bed that's empty. waiting for somebody with insurance to get sick. In this race, it does come down to clear choices of directions. Shall we go politics as usual? Shall we go backwards? Shall we go politics of change? Reaganomics must be challenged head on. Reagan doubled the military budget in peacetime, far beyond our needs. $200 toilet seats don't make us more secure. Sole source contracts don't make us more secure. Non-competitive bidding don't make us more secure. Militarizing the heavens do not make us more secure. He doubled the military budget beyond our needs and gave the rich and the powerful a $600 billion tax break. You combine the doubling of the budget on the one hand, military budget, and the cutting of $600 billion in revenue, it equals the largest deficit in the history of our nation. Shall we continue Reaganomics? Shall we manage Reaganomics? No. Shall we change Reaganomics? I represent the change factor. The largest employer in Mexico is not Mexican. Don't get angry with them, it's GM, paying 72 cents an hour and a meal. Biggest strike breaker in Brazil is not Brazil, it's GM. GM fired nearly 1,000 union activists and called on military police to break strikes. Reaganomics, corporate barracudas. In 1986, the largest exporter from Taiwan was not Taiwan. We buy 7 million bicycles a year from Taiwan. Don't get angry with the Taiwanese. There's not one Taiwanese bicycle company. Swin and American companies in Taiwan, cheap labor there, high prices here, profits up, wages down, workers abandoned. Corporate violence. In 86, the largest exporter from Taiwan was not Taiwan. It was GE. You won't hear no one else calling these companies name but Jesse Jackson. GE. They made $10 billion in profits, paid zero taxes, got a $100 million tax rebate for our workers on unemployment compensation had to pay taxes. Enough of Reaganomics. You need Jackson action. You need change. It's a pattern here. We've lost 650,000 family farms. Nothing wrong with family farmers. They're the most efficient in the world. They fed America, fed the world, and yet farm prices down, food prices up. It's not the family farmer taking advantage of the urban consumer. It's the barracuda in between eating up the farmer and the consumer. Corporate violence. 12 million jobs lost since 1981. 4 out of 10 people who lost their jobs were unemployed more than a year. 40% increase in working poor. Even in Massachusetts. Massachusetts lost 11% of its manufacturing jobs since 1984. Don't blame Dukakis, blame Reaganomics and the Barracudas. Don't blame Dukakis that union membership has plummeted in Massachusetts. Blame Reaganomics and the Barracudas. It's not enough to say you have more jobs with less wages and fewer benefits. Full employment is not enough. In slavery, everybody had a job, but they had no security. They had no benefits. I do not want to sustain Reaganomics or manage it. I want to change it. What does Reaganomics mean to you in the real world? It means busting Patco. It means allowing Lorenzo and corporate barracudas to drive these airline workers out of their jobs. What does it mean in the real world? It means the top 1% of our society is paying 20% less in taxes. The bottom 10% paying 20% more. It means reverse Robin Hood, taking from the poor and giving to the rich. Reaganomics. Often asked, what does Jesse want? I want to serve our nation. I want change. I want justice. I want fairness for workers. You're trapped between scab labor at home and cheap labor abroad. I want to break up the scissors play. I want workers to be on the pension board. Pension money must be as protected as FICA. What do I want? I want to raise the minimum wage for working people. This idea that if you raise the minimum wage, you're going to hurt teenagers. 80% of those on minimum wage are women. If women are able to make a decent wage, they can take care of their teenagers. Let's pay people who work. What do I want? Half of the nation's poor children live in a house headed by a woman where there is no man. I want comparable worth and pay equity for women. Women make 65 cents to $1 of what a man makes. A loaf of bread is not cheaper for a woman. A carton of milk is not cheaper for a woman. House rent is not cheaper for a woman. Reaganomics. They use bankruptcy courts to bust unions. What do I want? I want to appoint a National Labor Relations Board that's a mediation and not a strike-breaking board. Shall we sustain Purdue Chicken Company? Shall we manage Purdue Chicken Company? Shall we change Purdue Chicken Company? Reaganomics, incentives to merge corporations, leverage buyouts, golden parachutes for those who close the plants. They close the plant, come out the top window, land on soft grass, workers come out downstairs on fire catching hell. We must change the situation. To slow down these mergers, we need a merger review board. We need to tax mergers and acquisition. We need to shift incentives for merging corporations and purging workers and submerging our economy. We must reinvest in America, retrain our workers, retool our factories, research and development. Workers, you need change. We talk about international unions. You must really appreciate the international dimension of work and labor. We're either going to raise living standards in third world countries or they're going to lower our own. Workers being violated anywhere is a threat to workers everywhere. Slave labor in South Africa, or cheap labor in South Korea or Taiwan undercuts organized labor in this country. That's why I stand with the Polish steel workers today, because workers around the world must be protected and respected. It's fair and it's right. We're not discussing, as we did in Montgomery or Selma, we're not discussing black and white. We're discussing barracudas eating up small fish. These barracudas got little eyes and got sharp teeth. They don't care whether your fish is yellow or gold or black or white or brown. Barracudas eat up all small fish. We got to make a big judgment here. Shall we sustain Reaganomics? Shall we manage it? Shall we change it? What is it in real life? It is a doubling of the military budget, $150 billion a year. Are we safer in Latin America 7 years later? Do we have peace in Middle East 7 years later? Are we in apartheid in South Africa 7 years later? We've doubled the budget, but we've not doubled our security. We are paying $150 billion a year, defending Europe and Japan 42 years after the war. They are now creditor nations. We are now a debtor nation. They can better share the burden of their own defense. There are veterans in this room today who fought in World War II, who could not get hearing aids, eyeglasses, teeth, food, and medicine. I say use some of that money and reinvest in America. Do you want to sustain Reaganomics? Do you want to manage Reaganomics? Do you want to change? I'm giving you a choice. How do we get this deficit? Double the military budget, running from the Russian bear. Give the rich and the powerful a $600 billion tax break. Give them a $600 billion party. Now the party's over, the walls are crumbling, the lights are out. And now they want those of you who were not invited to the party to pay for the party. That's not fair. Why have I laid out a budget for debate and discussion? Any mayor, any governor, any administrator knows that you have budget outlaid to project with reasonable boundaries. Why do you put out budgets? Budgets express your priorities and your commitment. If you have no priorities, if you have no commitment, you're saying, trust me blindly. That's like a man in the hole, in the dark. So here comes a light. Trust the light. Don't jump too fast. It may be a train coming this way. It may not be sunlight. Don't just jump at the lights. You better hear the train wheels rolling. You better hear the whistle. You better see some evidence of whether you're looking at a train or sunlight. I'll take the heat for being an agent for change. I say freeze the military budget for 5 years. That means freezing it at about $300 billion. It amounts to a 10% cut over a 5-year period. By 1993, we'll be saving $60 billion a year. Then you'll have some money to reinvest. What did Stockman say? Stockman said Reagan drove the deficit to this state So there would be no more money left for housing, education, and development. You cannot make a commitment for change unless you change the predicament. The top 600,000 wage earners who make $200,000 a year or above should be at the 38% income tax bracket rather than 28%, and they can afford it. If when I say $200,000 a year, I'm talking about you, blow your horn. If the corporations at the 1970s level of taxation, I want to support corporations, but I want to give them incentives to change their direction. I want to give tax breaks and government contracts for reinvestment and retraining, not for merging, purging, and leverage buyouts. This is the Reagan Revolution. Uncollected taxes is not sufficient. It's not about uncollected taxes, it's exempted taxes. It's the exempted behavior of corporate barracudas. We must change the Reagan budget priorities. Secondly, drugs. Some people using drugs as anesthesia for the pain, some using it for money. Secretary Bowen said yesterday that the Reagan drug war is failing. It never was a war, just words. I appealed to Governor Dukakis and said, let's agree to put up X amount of dollars to fight a war on drugs. No commitment. You cannot fight a war on drugs just by dealing with the demand side. You must fight the supply. We need to convene those heads of state where drugs are grown. Give them alternatives. It will cost. Strengthening our Coast Guard will cost. Making our borders secure will cost. Money for those who are sick and want to get well, our sons and daughters, will cost. Treating those who now have AIDS will cost. It will cost more not to invest in stopping the flow of drugs into our country. We must make some commitment about our priorities. I said, Mr. Dukakis, let's put up $3 billion for daycare. We know it works. Only 1 of 6 children eligible get daycare. Why is that important? Mother, pregnant, prenatal care will cost less than $900. Cost less than $900. Low birth weight baby, up to $1,000 a day, sometimes 20 weeks. Mothers who work need daycare. 1 year in the Cleveland High School, Congressman Stokes, $2,500. 1 year in the Cleveland jail, $20,000. My friends, it makes good judgment to invest in prenatal care, Head Start, and daycare on the front side of life rather than jail care and welfare on the back side of life. Democrats must fight the Reagan Revolution. Mr. Dukakis says, let's educate every American child, a noble ambition, but put up $250 million. Educate every child, pay for a national teachers corps. Donald Trump is putting up $250 million to build 1 bridge in New York. It will cost to educate our children. It will cost less. It will cost more not to do it, but it will cost. It says $500 million for infrastructure, $500 million. If 1 bridge costs $250 million, and we're losing a bridge every other day, we must invest in rebuilding bridges. But guess what? When you rebuild bridges, you put iron workers back to work. You put steel workers back to work. You put construction companies back to work. You put engineers back to work. Let's reinvest in America. In economic violence, put the American worker back to work at good paying jobs. That's my challenge, and that's my commitment. And while you sitting here today all inspired, if I make the most sense to you, you vote for me on Tuesday. Been a lot of talk last few months about leaders, Congressman, some leaders. What do leaders do? Lead. What must leaders have? A resume or a following? Leaders lead with followers. Montgomery, Alabama, 1955 did not need a manager, it needed a leader. The boycott needed a leader. It hired some managers. Marching for the right to vote in Selma, Alabama. We needed leaders. We hired some managers. The struggle to end the war in Vietnam needed leadership. Leaders do not follow opinion polls. They mold opinion. We got to inspire people to change Reaganomics. Lift them out of their fears. We can't just manage Reaganomics. We got to change it. Leaders must inspire people. Lincoln inspired a nation when the country was torn apart. Roosevelt from his wheelchair inspired a nation. John Kennedy inspired a nation. They didn't manage us, they led us to higher heights. Leaders must inspire. And you cannot give off heat unless you're on fire yourself. And I'm on fire. I won't change. I won't change. We cannot just manage drug lords. We must fight drug lords in Latin America. The Middle East. It was not a matter of if we can find another Arab who'll do what Sadat did. It was not Sadat or Begin. It was Carter who convened Sadat and Begin. It was leadership. To have peace in the Middle East, we must lead and bring people together and end that war. Leaders must be clear. This last week, we went to the State Department. A report revealed by the State Department that Renamo, a group financed by South Africa, next door in Mozambique, has killed 100,000 plus people in the last 24 months. The State Department said Friday was the most heinous set of crimes, the most intentional, the most direct since the Holocaust of World War II. They slit the bellies of pregnant women open and left them to bleed to death. They cut necks. They ripped off ears. They punched folks' eyes out. They're going mad on people in South Africa, in Mozambique. They are occupying parts of Namibia, occupying all of Namibia, parts of Angola. They've invaded every frontline state. It's state terrorism. Yet, the State Department would not quite call South Africa a terrorist state because they see South Africa as our geopolitical ally in the region. Mr. Dukakis would not quite call them a terrorist state, but they must be called that because that will trigger anti-terrorist policy. We should not be trading with South Africa, and we should not be selling arms to countries that sell arms to South Africa. We must end state-sponsored terrorism. Even Mr. Reagan and Mrs. Thatcher want to get some arms to Mozambique to defend themselves against this kind of killing. We cannot leave them with bread Renamo will not allow them to eat. We cannot give them water that South Africa will not allow them to drink. They must be able to defend themselves. I appeal to Mr. Dukakis to seek aid, military aid to Mozambique to stop South Africa from killing those people next door. It's right, it's fair, it's consistent. Why do I raise these questions? I want the Democrats to win. I want to change the course. Bush does not want to discuss budgets. because of 7 imbalanced budgets. Bush does not want to discuss a plan to end the flow of drugs because he has no plan. Bush does not want to declare South Africa to be state terrorism because the fact is his allies are doing business in South Africa. Democrats must be the alternative to Republicans. We do not need 2 Republican parties in America. We need a Democratic Party and a Republican Party, and that's enough. Last of my friends of labor, if you want a record for fighting for change, I have a record. I've led boycotts to bring giants to their knees. Didn't have government level, had a good mind, the ability to organize, and consumer power. A record. I negotiated with Ford Motor Company, Coca-Cola, Burger King, General Foods, largest corporations in the world. Negotiation. I met with state treasurer to redirect monies in the smaller banks for development. The fire strike in Chicago lasted 22 days. 22 lives were lost. The mayor had the union chief arrested. While they fought, the city burned, the people died. I asked Mrs. Byrne, let me solve the strike. She said, you can't solve it. Mediators have failed. I said, well, give me the right to fail. In 48 hours, we solved the strike. Leadership. Record. School strike lasted in St. Louis, Missouri for 8 weeks. The teachers union called me in to solve it. In 3 days, the teachers were back at work, students were back in school. Leadership. Communication workers had a strike in Buffalo, New York, and McGrath Hospital lasted 11 weeks. I went to town, negotiated the end of the deal, got every worker their job back for CWA. Leadership. Is that right? When Goodman was in a Syrian jail, I didn't send for him. I didn't wish him well. I didn't think the act was despicable. I went to Syria and brought Goodman back home. That's leadership. Leadership. You give me a chance, I'm going to give you a choice. Dixon, Ohio will revive the hope of the nation. It's about a clear choice in another direction. Lastly, as we travel around the country speaking, we're going to allow these banquet halls and the maids and the janitors kind of ease up to the door. Cab drivers, the buses come, they blow their horns and they ease over to the side of the road and try to come in. Cooks turn things down low. The waiters stop rattling their trays because they know that when I become president, they'll have a friend in the White House. That's why they do it. That's why they do it. That's why they do it. I want to defend working people. I'm a working people's person. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I was born to a teenage mother. I'm a working people's person. I could not eat Thanksgiving turkey at 3 o'clock. Mama was preparing somebody else's turkey at Thanksgiving. We had to play ball in a